Welcome. We will get started in just a moment, just waiting for everyone to shuffle in. Thanks so much for joining us. You see, people are still walking through that virtual door, so we'll get started in just a moment.
I think you might have to put the word leave after that, Marianne.
Okay. Let's get started. So, hello, gold ghosts and higher ed professionals. A chilling welcome to you all. We're thrilled you've joined us for the Gray Decision Intelligence Demand Trend webinar. Please don't be scared. We're here to unmask the current trends haunting your programs, peering into the shadows of enrollment data and demystifying the spirits of student interest. We'll share insights into how qualified data can banish the double toil and trouble of academic program evaluation and help you avoid making grave decisions. A few housekeeping things. At the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll find the portal to the Q&A. Please feel free to trap all your burning questions there. We'll try to vanquish as many as we can during this session before they vanish into thin air. If we do run out of time, we will follow up with you from beyond via email, that is. We will be sending a link to the webinar recording and presentation slides in the next few days. Please look for it in your email. No demon hunting required. And now, with further ado, I'd like to conjure up our host, Bob Atkins. Bob is not only the founder and chief oracle of Gray Decision Intelligence, but also a renowned program evaluation expert and a best-selling author whose work is a real treat among higher ed publications. Bob, the full moon is high. Take it away.
Okay, now we know who's really into Halloween. So, Marianne, thank you very much. That was kind of a spooky introduction, but I'll try not to over Halloween the rest of the presentation. So, a little bit of background, an agenda here. First, we're going to talk a little bit about some things that Gray has going on in program evaluation systems and our new AI. Then we'll cover the brand new IPEDS completions data, which really is hot off the press. I think last month it came out. Maybe the last version of IPEDS we see for quite some time. So I hope you all enjoy it. We've got some other student demand indicators we'll go through. Then we'll take a look at employment, and I'll summarize for you. Without further ado, Gray is core business is offering a program evaluation system. And you all may think of that as software, and a good deal of it is software and data. We keep data on markets, margins, academic performance, and particularly student outcomes. And we also believe, though it's not readily captured in terms of data, that mission is a vital part of program evaluation. But a system is much more than that. A system has to take that data, put it into software so people can see the data, and then engage the right users, give them the right information, and set a context in which they can do an evaluation together in a collaborative way, share their insights, review the data, and make good program decisions. And then the hard part starts, which is actually managing your programs on an ongoing basis, keeping that data up to date, and making decisions that are responsive to changes in your marketplace. So that's what we view a program evaluation system as. It's not just a piece of software. It's the process that you have to wrap around that, the data that's in it, in order to make good decisions and sustain a healthy portfolio. Now, in our wanderings through higher ed, we also found there are a set of fairly evergreen issues. One is the increasing ill-preparedness of our incoming students. And the latest data from the high school surveys was not comforting in that regard. More and more people are going to be coming to college, not really ready to do college level work. And that tends to lead to attrition, which is expensive for the college and the student. Very bad outcome for everybody. When a student fails to graduate, they've made a financial investment, they get very little return on that investment. And as important, they spent part of their life that they can't really ever get back. And I think one of the other issues we have to keep an eye out for is that they are unlikely to say positive things about higher education itself. And I think those 44 million people or so who are out there with some college but no degree, are a big part of the problem in the attitudes and perceptions about higher ed. Because in fact, those people probably didn't get much value out of their education. So with that in mind, we started to say, well, what can we do about that? And we invented some stuff using AI. So it's what we call COCO. If you want the COCO stress ball, let us know. It's now a thing. Very popular at EDUCAUSE. And COCO is a set of what we call college companions. And there are a few ground rules for a good companion in college. Of course, it has to be engaging so people will use it. But importantly, it can't be so engaging that there's a sort of psychological transference or emotional attachment to the AI itself. It's got to do its task and then let the student move on. Of course, it has to be secure and protect the privacy of your information. It also has to maintain the privacy of the individual, though the level of privacy varies depending on the application. If I'm thinking about what I want to do with my career, I may say things I really don't want to share with anyone. If I'm getting tutored by an AI tutor, I shouldn't be surprised that my professor is going to look at that to understand how students are doing, what their issues are. It should be grounded in your content, not just looking out at what it's learned from the web. It should be grounded to the specific content of a course or the institution itself. Of course, they're all available 24/7 and they can speak dozens of languages. So that's really not an issue, but is table stakes, if you will, for a good AI application. The three we focused on, Course Companion is the one that most directly addresses the issues I was just talking about of retention and enabling new students to succeed in colleges, even if they're a little ill-prepared. It's a wonderful piece of software. Can take you through, as far as we know, any kind of course. It does physics, it can do English, and it's there for students. It uses Socratic method, so it will not do their homework for them, but it will help them do their homework. Career Companion is just what it sounds like. It's an AI career advisor, and it can take a student from visiting your website through their freshman year, help them find an internship, help them write their resume, and find specific jobs for them on graduation. Can even coach them. We've integrated the Communications Companion. They can experiment, do a mock interview with a potential employer, and that can also be integrated into your communications courses. And we developed that one because one of the most common complaints about students graduating from college is that they have weak communication skills. So having an application where a student can come in, rehearse an interview, rehearse a difficult encounter with a potential future employee, prepare for a class presentation, and develop their communication skills, we thought was very important. So these are all available now. We're very much looking for folks who want to try them out. And we've got our first 150 or so students using them to good effect so far. So just a little heads up on what we're working on here at Gray. Now let's turn to the market. And we'll talk first about IPEDS completions. Total completions are good news, up 4.4%. Since 2019. That's not a huge growth rate, but it's a good one. And on ground grew 2.4%, not as fast as online, which grew 21% over that same time period. So pretty rapid growth in online. And on the on-ground side, completions are actually declining from 2019 through 2023. So it's very good news to see them bounce back a little bit in 2024. 2.4% isn't all that exciting, but it's a heck of a lot better than the decline. So we're seeing growth in both online and on ground. As you might expect, online is quite a bit faster, though its growth rate has slowed down. It peaked in 2021 during COVID at 15%. It's dropped down now to a 4.4% annual growth rate. So it's moderating a bit, and on ground is catching up with a 2.4% growth rate after years of decline. Now we get into online and look at who the big boys are, and they're Western governors with 50,000 completions a year. SNHU, 38, almost 39,000. University of Phoenix, down to 26,000, used to have well over 100,000 completions a year. Liberty University at 23, Grand Canyon in 23, Purdue and Capella in Attia around 19,000, ASU at 17,000, APUS focused on the military at about 16,000, and University of Maryland, used to be University of Maryland Global Campus, at 14,000. Now, one of the interesting things that's been going on in this sector, you see the growth rate, and a lot of this is, from organic growth. But the other thing that's going on within the online institutions is there's been a huge amount of share change. So many of those students that used to be at the University of Phoenix, as it went through a very difficult period, have ended up at these other institutions. So in addition to the structural growth, which is substantial, the big boys here and some of the smaller ones as well have benefited from troubles at some of the other players. It's been a share shift in a sense. By the way, these 10 institutions alone constitute 19% of the total U.S. online education market. So these big players are disproportionately large. There isn't that kind of concentration in on-ground education, as you might imagine. The distribution of growth varies a lot by degree level. So associates was up 3%, bachelor's declined slightly, master's flat, doctoral degrees up 4%, and then the certificates saw some pretty good growth for undergrad and post-bac certificates, 12% for undergrad, 7% for post-bac, and 4% decline in post-master certificates. I'm still wondering how you offer a certificate in a way that is beneficial financially for the institution. I think undergrad, you can do that by blending them into existing programs, which is a great idea. Post-bac gets tougher, though you can do the same thing by blending them in. If you're trying to offer a certificate on its own, I think that's going to prove to be very difficult financially. You've got to pay the money to attract the student, but you get a very small amount of revenue for every student you attract. So I suspect the numbers there just don't work. It is possible also to do that by selling direct to employers, where the employer is the buyer and you don't have that same marketing cost per student. But still, both are growing. As I say, I wonder about the financials on those unless they're embedded in an existing course or program. What's growing? General studies is up substantially, 20,000 students, nearly 20,000 students. Then we have a series of master's programs, business administration and management, up almost 8,000, education masters up 7,000. And then we get bachelor's degrees doing well. Computer science at almost 7,000. This is the increase in completions year over year. And let's see what else we got here. Psychology bachelor's up 6,000, and cybersecurity up about 4,500. This one has been growing for 10 or 15 years now. I suspect we'll see some of the same things in AI as we coming up. It'll have that same sort of long-term aggressive growth path. Master's degrees up 8,500, and education masters up 7,200. Now I've left out all my certificates. So general studies cert, esthetician, welding, electrician, and operations management also had very substantial growth during this period. And keep an eye on this idea of general studies cert. We'll come back to that in a few minutes. It's a growing space, and it's a bit of a swap for an associate's degree in general studies. So as I mentioned,
can I interrupt you 1 moment for a question?
Mm-hmm.
For business admin and management masters, are you combining other SIP codes with the business admin and management SIP code? Because that one has been in decline from Laura Lee.
Yeah, I was surprised by this too, and I will double check it. But no, I don't believe we are combining anything into that. Monica, check me and check with Steve to make sure I'm right. But
it was
surprised. What?
It was definitely in decline. And just year over year, it picked up a little.
Yeah. So that's an important change. What had been going on there, to your point about combining things, is business data and data analytics in general were cannibalizing the general business program. I think people are going for those specializations. But it does look as though, and again, we'll double check it, but that the traditional MBA had a little bit of a comeback. Now, 19,000, that's probably on a base of, or 8,000, on a base of well over 100,000 completions. So it's not a huge growth rate. It's just a reversal of a long decline that we've seen as well as you. We look at the fastest growing programs at the certificate and associate level. This is the less than bachelor's degree certificates. And we've got general studies leading the pack. So almost 20,000 incremental students there. Estheticians, welding, and electrician, all around 6,000 incremental graduates. And then we have HVAC down at 3,300. So very healthy representation of career and technical education, or CTE, programs here, almost half of the total list. We only have a couple of techs, and of course, cybersecurity makes this list as well. And IT certifications are also here at 3,300. Then we have a couple of health programs, the Allied Health Associate at 3,500 and Psychology Associate at 2,500. At the bachelor's level, it's a somewhat different picture. We get a lot of tech and analytics here. Computer science, number 1, cybersecurity, number 2, business analytics, number 3. Then down at number 5, we have IT. And then we have 3 health programs: psychology, allied health, and exercise physiology. Psychology, by far the largest, growing almost 2,000 completions, and 600 each in allied health and exercise physiology. We also have a few other programs. General studies, again, makes the list. Environmental science and sports and fitness management, both up about 500 completions year over year. I should mention, too, that we did screen these so that there are at least 5,000 completions per year in the prior year. That's why you don't see something like AI showing up, because it's still very small, so it doesn't make this cut, but it is out there, and it is growing. Half the fastest growing graduate programs are in technology. Now, this is where I mentioned the trade-off, business analytics growing quite rapidly, and that does cannibalize the traditional MBA program. Computer science up 7,000, data analytics up almost 4,000, and information technology up almost 3,000 completions. We have a couple of other tech here as well. Information science, almost 2,000, and cybersecurity makes the list again at 1,500 incremental completions. We have 3 health programs: mental health counseling, social work, and nursing practice, and 1 other, law. So it turns out that completing a law program is a growing area. Now let's take a look at some other indicators of demand. I'm going to look at Google keywords in particular. We pay attention to Google keywords because with a little bit of luck, they're a forward-looking indicator. That is, they tell you what students are looking for now online that they'll enroll in later. So it gives a little bit of headlights into the future. Let me explain how to read the chart first. The black is 2023, the medium blue is 2024, and the light blue is 2025. Now, when we look at this year, we were up every month except June, which was down slightly, in July, down a little bit. Then the trend came back in August, and then we fell out of bed, down 15% year over year in September. I can't explain why, but there's a little bit of a worrisome thing. If it continues, then it's really worth paying attention to. It may not bode well for enrollment coming up in the spring and next fall. But I wouldn't take any 1 month shift as a really strong indicator. We'll have to wait and see if this repeats itself in the coming months in October, November, December, before we draw any inferences from it. But it's a little scary. Programs are the fastest growing U.S. search volume. So what was growing in that context? Economics and econometrics. So the quant side of economics, and many people have converted their regular economics program into this. So this is a combination of the liberal arts econ and the more quantitative econ, because there were shifts in the way this was accounted for that make separating them out meaningless. Many people reclassified their programs to be in the STEM fields because it was advantageous for state regulation. Also helped with immigration. It got better visa status than it would have otherwise, and it's a pretty popular international program. So we have combined those zip codes. They're up very substantially. The search volume there's up almost 200,000 searches a month. Early childhood education and teaching also grew rapidly, up about 150,000 searches a month. 3D modeling and design tech, physics, both up in the 80,000 to 90,000 searches range. Then we have fashion, apparel, and design, and a couple of other arts programs. Fashion is about 80,000. Then we have drama, theater arts, general, and music at about 40,000. Then we have some smaller growth levels, international relations, pharmacology, and American Sign Language, between 40 and 70,000. So let's look at the keywords that are hot. And, we should expect to see the 3D modeling here as we saw it on the prior page, but we've got early childhood education, cosmetology, data analysis, very consistent with the information we saw before on the growth in that program, online pharmacy, online pharmacology, culinary schools, trade schools, acting class, and construction management degree online. This is part of a very large database we have that keeps track of 20 keywords for 900 programs. So you can have a good sense of what's hot and what's not, and it doesn't tell you all the keywords you need for a program, but it will tell you some of the leading keywords that are very distinct. So we do a fair amount of work to make sure we pick words that aren't going to get mistaken for other things. Oftentimes, for example, the abbreviation of a college name is also the abbreviation for something else or several colleges. So we try to pick keywords that are distinct and unique and represent programs. Now let's take a look at enrollment. I love this database. Why? Unlike IPEDS, we get the data 3 times a year. So it's very, very current. It's very comprehensive. Approximately 98% of all students enrolled in the US are included in the data. And I'm working to see if we can't get more granular information on enrollment as well. But it certainly can keep track of trends by geography and by program. Now, the first thing I'm going to bring you to, though, is one of the fastest growing segments in higher ed. This keeps surprising me. I heard about it a couple of years ago. I thought it might be a blip. It doesn't appear to be. It's like if you said, what's the fastest growing group? And somebody responded, students under 18, I would go, huh? This is dual enrollment. And it is a very fast growing space. I suspect it will continue to grow because of people's price sensitivity. And this becomes a way to get college credits while in high school, generally at a pretty good discount. The actual pricing is all over the place, depending on the state you're in. So this can be a very attractive market segment in some states and not very attractive at all in others, depending on the reimbursement structure for each state. But where it's attractive, it's certainly growing. And I would take a hard look at it as a college, not so much because you get the student when they're in high school to take a few courses with you, but that's an on-ramp to come to college. So you can think of it as a funny way as a student paying to become a lead for your marketing organization. And I have one client where 30% of their incoming of the people who take are dual enrolled in their area, excuse me. So 30% of the people dual enrolled in their area come to them for college. So it's a very effective recruiting mechanism for them. So I thought I'd point this out. It's not something I've heard a lot about in general around the industry, but it's certainly an important trend. And you might think of it as the bottom of a feeder system. So the next step in that ladder is the associates and certificate programs. And this has been a pretty healthy space for 3 years now. It declined very dramatically between 2013 or 14, all the way through to 2021, and then began to bounce back. 22-23 was up 1%, 23-24 up 5%. That's pretty robust growth. And 24-25 up another 5%. You will note that it still hasn't recovered all the way to 2019 levels, but it appears to be making a serious comeback. Now, the other reason to think about this, besides being great if you're a community college, if you're a 4-year college, this means the feeder system for you, the people coming up who may transfer, is growing. So I think this bodes very well for 4-year colleges, especially those that make an effort to reach out to their local community college and make those students feel welcome on campus. What's growing? I mentioned keep an eye on general studies, and here it is, 106,000 students enrolled, and actually incremental students enrolled, so that grew by that much. Health services, we have 3 different programs in the health area: allied health, registered nursing, and RadTech. All grew substantially, well over 27,000 for all these. Business also picked up 40,000 students. So that's a trend that's repeating here. So that makes me a little more comfortable that that completions number we talked about was valid. because we're seeing that same bounce in enrollment. Cybersecurity, not a surprise. Engineering, also up 14,000 students enrolled. Then we have a handful of career and technical programs that make this list: bookkeeping, electrician, and HVAC maintenance tech, all with over 14,000 incremental students. So these are the fastest growing programs in terms of enrollment. And again, I'll take your eye back. That is unusual to see business on this page. Certainly, it's always on the page with the biggest programs, but it is not usually on the page when we talk about growth. So I mentioned this idea of a ladder and the growing number of students and potential transfers from community college. So I'm going to pick that general studies program and look at it historically. So what we see here is the certificate and associate level degree completions for each of those. And there's an interesting trend. The number of people completing an associate's degree has been going down a little bit and then a lot. Last year, down almost 10,000 students completing that. And while that's been going on, we've seen rapid growth in completions of certificates in general studies. My understanding is that many states are now requiring that colleges recognize the courses for credit that a student has taken in the process of getting a certificate. So we're seeing a little bit of a shift in the mix of certificates versus associate degree completers. But overall, when you look at this, we're seeing pretty good growth, 3% growth rate overall, and a 16% growth rate in that cert population in 2024. So cert completions in 2024. So this is a good sign, I think, of that there are people out there who are going to be exploring a four-year college opportunity. If we can reach out to them and welcome them, potentially an important source of growth for the four-year colleges as well. So with that in mind, it's not surprising to find that bachelor's degree completions are actually up. Again, after a long period of decline, 23-24, we saw a 1% increase in enrollment. 24-25 are up 2% in enrollment. What's growing? Registered nursing was number one. That actually surprises me, by the way. That's such a heavily regulated space. I didn't think you could add that many students in a nursing program because you couldn't get permission to add the seats. My worry is that those are actually students in pre-nursing programs, not in the final 2 years that is regulated. If that's the case, it's very troublesome because most of those people are going to end up not able to complete their nursing degree because there are not enough seats for them. But oftentimes what will happen is that'll spill over into this allied health program where we see rapid growth as well. Business and finance had four programs make this list. First, finance general, accounting, and then business administration and management. That one is very strong in this set of data. Business analytics also up 16,000. We have a couple of STEM fields. There's cybersecurity, no surprise there. Mechanical engineering, though, is a bit of a surprise. Very tough program, often constrained in terms of admissions. Yes, nursing, there's a question whether it includes RN to BSN, which it does. So keep that in mind that this is, if we could strip out online, which we often do, then you'd see the RN to BSN on its own. But in this case, it's blended in. So that could be where a lot of that growth is coming from. Electronics engineering, biology, biological sciences, also up 13,000 to 14,000. Now let's look at master's and doctoral programs. Here, the history has been a little bit more uneven, some rapid growth and a little bit of flat and down. And now we're finally up 2%. So good performance in 24-25 in terms of completion. So, excuse me, enrollment. So very encouraging. By the way, I find all this data very encouraging. It's really nice to be able to talk about positive enrollment trends. Having given this presentation through all the teens, it was pretty hard telling everybody how bad it was out there and about all the declines that really were taking place. So it's very encouraging to see these numbers moving up. This also is a breath of fresh air for everybody's financials. So I hope it persists. Master's and doctorate year-over-year unit growth, what's hot and what's not. Here's business analytics again. classified here as a tech program. We see more analytics, and data science, cyber, and AI making the list here for the first time across these. 6,000 incremental students enrolled in AI. And I don't have the total off the top of my head, but I can tell you that's a very substantial growth on a relatively small base. Then we see RN ticking up at the master's level, almost 17,000. Social work up 14,000. Mental health counseling up 12,000. And FNP up some 10,000 students enrolled. And then finally, we have an increase in enrollment in medicine and nursing practice as well. Medicine's been a surprise to me too. Again, very constrained number of seats there, so it's encouraging to see some more doctors getting trained. I know, at least in Massachusetts, basic things like finding a general practitioner, extremely difficult, if not impossible. And there are a number of other medical professions where that's true. And we talk about degree creep often, where the degree requirements are increasing to get a job. In medicine, I think we're seeing is degree creeping down. We're seeing increasing number of people with lower level credentials doing higher level jobs. In particular, nurse practitioners picking up the load in primary care. So interesting trends there. Again, I'd highlight some of the big things here in terms of analytics, business analytics, as well as data analytics, some sustained trends around cybersecurity, a new entrant with artificial intelligence, and then a raft of health. This is very unusual to see this many health programs growing. They're all very large, but to see this kind of growth is impressive.
Bob, quick question. Can you clarify what does RN at the master's level mean? The RN is an associate's or bachelor's degree.
In this context just means a nursing degree. So it would include all your masters, the flavors of master's nursing. And Monica, you can double check that again. Please make sure I don't give people misinformation.
Okay.
So international, not such a bright spot. So let's hope that all those trends on domestic enrollment, well, those are total enrollment, that the domestic audience can grow. Because as all of you know, this is not going to grow. International page views, a leading indicator of enrollment, international down 47% year over year. This list used to be led by a number of other countries, but India is now by far the largest. Keep in mind that we don't have full representation on China. That's only a recent entrant, so its place in the list is probably a bit misleading. But the rest are accurate and changing quite a bit. There are some countries here that are missing this time that I'm used to seeing. Nepal in particular usually makes the top 10, not here this time. So this is a pretty rapidly changing market. If you're international, as many of you know, you really need a portfolio of countries because the dynamics around any given country can change quite rapidly, both because of domestic changes in that market, as well as changes in our attitude towards that market in terms of visa permissions or granting visas. So this is volatile and not in a good way right now. There are some things that are growing, albeit at a fairly modest rate now. Business, again, music is a surprise entry on the growers here. General studies, biology, psychology, linguistics, math, that's not surprising. Chemistry, again, the more engineering and technical side is what I expect to see here. But really this time we're seeing a lot of very much non-technical fields make the list, which is interesting. And by the way, of course, that's the bachelor's programs. Masters, we had no programs that grew. I don't recall ever seeing this before. The ones that declined the least, neuroscience, criminal justice, entrepreneurship, early childhood education, teacher education, geography, legal studies, animal sciences, what an eclectic list, organizational leadership, and general studies. So let's take a look at a different kind of demand indicator now, Coursera. Now, you might well ask, why do we look at Coursera? There are a couple of reasons. One is Coursera is kind enough to give data where we can track month by month the growth in enrollment by course. The second reason is Coursera is a great place to find the cutting edge academically. And it's a good indicator of what particular topics are hot. And if you're thinking of offering certificates and so forth, this is a great way to find out what's successful out there in that less than degree market. Highest enrollment courses. Well, remember we saw a lot of data. Well, that Foundations data everywhere has been one of the highest volume courses forever. 54,000 people enrolled during the month of September. So very substantial course. This course is bigger than most universities. Now, I should say, let's be careful. This is not at all analogous to a student enrolled in college. Folks can come and go in here. Many do. I've done it a couple times. Come in, maybe take the first class and then leave. Since there's very little financial commitment, there's a huge attrition rate. So there's nothing, it is not like being enrolled in college, but it is a good indicator of what people are interested in. Here comes AI for everyone, an introduction to artificial intelligence. Between the two, they enrolled, 55,000 students in September. Technical support and a couple of other tech kinds of programs, introduction to data analytics, UX design, and Python, all here in the top 10. Then I found it interesting. There are actually 3 different flavors of project management that make the top 10 this month. Project initiation, project planning, and agile project management all make our top 10. If you add them up, you're looking at, about 40,000 students across those 3. So very, very significant interest in project management as a subject. Now, what are the skills that are being taught across Coursera? They're kind enough to tell us what skills are associated with each of the courses. And so you can do the math and figure out how many times a given skill was sought out by a student. Data analysis, by far the leader at 125,000 students. Data visualization coming in second at nearly 100,000. Then we get to some more traditional tech stuff, SQL, structured query language, at 71,000, spreadsheets, 70,000, data science and data cleansing and machine learning and Python. Well, I wouldn't put those in, but I'd put those 3 together, data science, cleansing, and machine learning. That's all of your AI stuff associated with predictive modeling. So you're looking at almost 200,000 people who engaged in one type of that learning or another to develop those skills. So huge amount of interest in those skills. Python and deep learning. Python obviously is a coding language. Deep learning is another flavor of AI, akin to machine learning. So again, a lot of interest in AI related skills. Also in the data preparation, it's often associated with creating AI predictive models in particular. And last but not least, there are people interested in strategic thinking, with some 42,000 students enrolled trying to pick up that skill. Now let's shift over to the job market. And I don't think our data this month in terms of total jobs is reliable, so I'm going to skip over that. Many of you are aware of what's going on in the overall job market. I believe that it's troublesome. The Fed thinks it's troublesome, so they lowered rates just yesterday. So that's an important indicator. And let me take a minute on this because it really is a very important indicator. We did some analysis to try and figure out what predicts enrollment in college. This is all triggered by the cliff and the prediction of the coming demographic cliff in higher ed. As many of you know who've been on this before, don't believe in the cliff. You can call me a cliff skeptic. When we ran the numbers, what we found was there was about a 7% R squared, that is change in birth rate some 18 or 20 years ago, explained about 7% of the change in enrollment in higher ed. That means 93% of the change was unexplained by demographics. So what does explain enrollment? First, I will say it's a very complex phenomenon. Everything influences parents, wealth, political perspectives, financial issues that you may have at home, and so forth and so on. All of you are aware of this. So the idea that it could be dictated by enrollment or by birth rates was always kind of a fragile concept. Now, at the extreme, it's absolutely true. And if you look at Korea, for example, where birth rates decline 20 or 30%, you absolutely cannot recover from that based on other indicators. So they have a real enrollment cliff in Korea. My belief is we do not. At best, it was predicted to be a 1% decline per year. And yeah, you put a few years together, that gets to be pretty material. But it isn't a cliff, it's a slope, and it's a headwind. But what we did find when you try to predict enrollment is that there's a series of events that take place. The first, interestingly, is inflation. And when inflation goes up, that's a predictor that we're going to have trouble, that enrollment will go up a few years after that. You might say, why? Well, yesterday, the Feds were worried about it. Previously, the Feds were worried about inflation, so they raised interest rates. When they raised interest rates, the economy slowed down. When the economy slows down, enrollment goes up. So there's that chain reaction. So one might expect if the Fed's lowering rates, that they believe inflation is somewhat under control, and they're going to loosen it up, and jobs will go up. And when jobs go up, enrollment goes down. Personally, I think we're probably not headed for that scenario. I think we have some serious employment problems headed our way. You may have seen that Amazon laid off, I think, 20,000 people, and UPS came right behind them with laying off another 15 or 20,000 people. This was just announced in the last couple of days. So we've got the beginnings of layoffs, and you really have to watch out when people deliver packages, lay people off. Some of that's because they're becoming more efficient, and there was tremendous pressure on UPS to become more efficient. But it also means that delivery of packages are likely down. And in fact, their domestic US package volumes were down. When fewer packages are delivered, that means the economy is slowing down. Now, that may sound gloomy, but for all of us, it's actually good news. Because again, typically when the economy slows down and unemployment ticks up, enrollment goes up. So all that's the context for talking about job postings. The most rapid growth here was in retail sales with 52,000 additional jobs. We've got customer service representatives and sales-related roles up about 13,000 jobs. General and operations managers up 36,000. Software applications up 19,000. And I'm sure many of you have heard that AI is going to take over software jobs. Well, just recognize that that's still one of the fastest growing fields out there in terms of job posting. So the predictions of its demise are somewhat exaggerated, perhaps just premature. But I think that the backlog of demand for coding is so substantial that it'll be years before AI really displaces coding workers. If you're working in any organization, you go over to IT and you say, can you help me with something? You get in line, and the line is 6 to 12 to 18 months. And if that's how deep the backlog is, and it's growing usually, we have a lot of coding to do before we don't need to hire coders. So I'm, again, sort of a skeptic that that's going to happen in the short term. Long term, it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. It could be that our coders just become enormously more productive, and that means that we can create more things. That's my bet. There's some vocational programs that are hot here. Heavy tractor trailer truck drivers up 15,000, security guards up 10,000, automotive service technicians and mechanics up almost 10,000. And I have to come back, and I make my comments about the future, and I have to admit that sometimes I'm really wrong. I thought by now we'd be seeing a lot more fully automated trucks and a reduction in the back. There's been more jobs than there are truck drivers for a long time, but it doesn't appear to be the case yet. And who knows how far away we are from autonomous trucks. They are out there on the roads now, but not at any scale. On the health side of the world, we have nursing assistants, licensed vocational nurses, and physical therapists, all growing over 10,000 job postings year over year. What skills are in demand? Well, interestingly, marketing, Microsoft Office. For all of you, I would encourage you to use Microsoft Office tools throughout the curriculum, whether that's something as basic as Word or PowerPoint, but also include Excel. It's a requirement in almost every job. Nursing, up 42,000. Construction, up 37,000. Remember, we saw construction growing earlier in the data as well. Merchandising, up 36,000. Banking and finance, up almost 30,000 each. Project management, recurring here at 29,000. Rehab at 29,000, and automation in general at 27, almost 28,000. So those are your fastest growing skills. And Microsoft has been on this list forever. And while I'm not a big fan of Microsoft, I think it's an essential skill in the workplace and continues to grow. Let me summarize for you. Completions rose in 2024. That's great news. On-ground completions rose 2.4%. Online grew 4.4%. Undergrad certificates were up 12%, and post-batch certificates grew 7%. So we're finally seeing growth in education again. Extremely good news. For those of you in four-year colleges, I think the pipeline coming up is very encouraging. We've got the growth in the dual enrolled students. We've got growth in the people who are taking general education courses in two-year colleges. And I think that'll all lead into both primary demand for 4 years and transfer students as well. In September, Google searches for academic programs did fall. So if that continues, it'll erase some of my optimism, but I'm hoping it won't. Econometrics, economics and econometrics had the highest growth in searches. Retail salespeople had the highest growth in employer demand. Keep in mind on that, that's the largest employment category in the United States. So when we do unit growth, it's very likely to come to the top of a list just because a small percentage change is an enormous unit change. I skipped over this today, but one of the things we looked at, traditionally is sociology to see if the traditional ways of looking at it are correct. And the traditional way would say that they go into 3 occupations, and that's not true. Sociology grads go into some 777 occupations, most not related to their measure or their major, all of which pay more than directly related. So a lot of misinformation about what people really do with a college degree. Let me remind you about our upcoming webinars. On November 13th, we'll be talking about the new economics agent from GradeEI, where you can ask a question in plain English and get the data back you want in a few seconds. Huge relief for all of us who don't really want to wait around in the data. We just want the answer to a question. You can now ask your question and get the answer. And of course, on November 20th, we'll do our monthly demand trends webinar and update you for what's happened in the month of October. Thank you very much. Appreciate all of you joining me and sticking with us through all of this. And I hope that the enrollment trends continue.
Does anyone have any other questions? We have just a few more minutes so we can answer some.
Oh, here we go, Ralph. So Ralph is offering a treat. The first 10 attendees to name their favorite Halloween film will receive a complimentary program scorecard. You can choose any program you want. Be quick before somebody else snags them. Personally, I don't watch Halloween movies. I get really scared. So you can tell everybody that I am a scaredy cat when it comes to this. I was traumatized in about 4th grade when somebody showed Dracula at a birthday party. I didn't sleep for 2 years after that. So yeah, I stay away from Halloween films.
Have you ever seen something like Hocus Pocus, which is really more of a comedy?
No, I haven't. But I'm easy to scare, so that might even be too much for me.
We could always get you to watch a Disney Halloween movie, Bob.
There we go. I don't know, though. Mary Ann's vampire teeth was enough to traumatize me, so. All right, thank you all very much. And for those of you who've given us your movies, we will be back in touch to give you your data, your program summaries.